Hello everyone and welcome to our new episode of the Expat Career and Lifestyle podcast. This is Dominika, your host, and today I am coming to you with another fantastic guest, Nicole Webb. She is a former Sky News reader in Australia and author of China Blond book, where she shared how she and her husband and her daughter moved to China, her challenges in ancient city Xi'an. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you very much for being here on the show. So please tell us more about you and how exactly your international journey in China started.
It all started in Sydney, and I was a journalist and a newsreader, and I met my husband James on a blind date, and he was working in hotels, and in hotels they like you to keep progressing, and there's lots of opportunities obviously to live overseas, and he sort of brought that up with me in the first few dates, and I said no. I said I think my time for living overseas has come and gone, and also, you know, I'm a career girl. I've worked really hard to get to this point in my career. You know, I don't really want to move, so we kind of put it on the back burner until a year later, and a hotel in Hong Kong came up onto our radar, and for some reason or another, I just decided, you know what, maybe it's time to do something different. You know, I had been at Sky News for 10 years doing the same thing, and I thought, you know, I sort of have lost my ambition a little bit, and it just seemed like a great thing to do. So lo and behold, that was our first move overseas. So we moved to Hong Kong, and in that very same week that we found out we were moving, we also found out that we were having a baby. So that was, you know, a bit of a double whammy, so to speak. It was like, oh, you know, moving to a foreign country. I'm sure lots of people can relate. You know, no job, no home, no family, no friends, and a baby on the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was a lot, a lot on your plate. Yeah, not only leaving the job, but also moving with your husband and with a new baby coming in. So you spent how many years in Hong Kong? 4 years.
Yes, we were in Hong Kong for 4 years. So like most expats, we said we were going for 2 years at the most, and then we ended up staying for 4. And we really loved Hong Kong. You know, once we got over that initial culture shock, and, you know, you start to settle in and you find friends and work and all of that. And then James got the call to move to Xi'an, which is in northwest China. But this, you know, this kind of came after we realized that he needed to get the next role, which was general manager of a hotel. So we knew that we had to move. We just didn't know where that would be. And lots of, you know, hotels from all over the globe came up. But, you know, for one reason or another, they didn't work out. And China just wasn't going anywhere. They were building so many hotels. You know, it's a force to be reckoned with, as we are finding out. So, Xi'an was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you moved, to China. So if you can describe a little bit, like how was this transition for you from Hong Kong to China? Because in your book, China Blond, you are describing how you transitioned to China and how you built your new life, expat life there. And you loved Hong Kong. This is what I understood from the book. But relationship with China was a little bit more complicated. So if you can tell us more about this transition.
Yeah, I guess I had been to China before, to the mainland, to Shanghai, which is probably the most like Hong Kong of all China's cities. But I mean, Xi'an was technically a second-tier city. So it's just a little bit more, I want to say country or rural, but it's not really. It still has 9-10 million people. It's still a very busy city. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is there are something like 650 cities in China alone, and many of them have way more than 1 million people. So it's a big country, and obviously you can't know what these cities are like. And while Xi'an was very beautiful on the outside, it had lots of amazing architecture. It was really quintessential Chinese, with red lanterns hanging everywhere and beautiful old buildings. It was very different underneath. So Hong Kong, as you probably know, had British influence for 150 years. So it was quite, I guess it had the West meets East influence. So you had the best of both worlds, I guess. And then when you cross over to the mainland, I guess the first thing that really struck me was the lack of English. Most particularly, I think, underneath the signs on the street, you know, on all of the shops and all of the road signs. In Hong Kong, there had been the Chinese characters, but underneath there was always English. So that sort of struck me at first. And they also drive on the different side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a very a different culture altogether, really, despite what many people probably think. So it was really like moving to another world. And we all know what it's like, I guess, when we first move to a new country. It's always daunting and scary and a bit terrifying, and you wonder if you'll ever meet anyone. And, you know, I certainly felt no different. I remember looking out the window. We stayed in the hotel we lived in the hotel, but we stayed in a hotel room for about 6 weeks. And I just remember looking outside, and it was just, you know, chaos, absolute chaos, crowds of people, cars just driving all different ways all over the road, no order to it, beeping constantly. It was just really so different. I just remember thinking, how am I going to survive?
Mm-hmm. So, like, what would you say was your biggest challenge?
I think probably the language at first, because really very little English was spoken. You know, inside the hotel where James worked, quite a few of the staff could speak English, but you soon realize that it's just that basic conversation. You know, it's hi, how are you? Have you had a good day? And you really can't get any further than that. And then outside of that, you know, there was nothing. So that was really tough. Also, I think we were people were fascinated by us, because in Xi'an, so many people had never seen a Westerner. You know, there were lots of people that came to visit this pagoda, this 1,300-year-old temple across from the hotel. And they came from all different parts of China. So many places were even, you know, more rural. And I know that some of those people had probably only ever seen Westerners on the movies, like the American movies. So seeing myself and Ava, who my daughter by that stage was 3.5, they were just absolutely fascinated by her and her long blonde hair and her white skin. And of course, they used to crowd around us, and we really you couldn't stop. If you stopped in the street, everybody would be surrounding you and taking photos and touching you and, you know, I guess saying things to you, but in Chinese, which at the time I had no idea what that meant, or if it was harmless, or, you know, if it was dangerous. It certainly felt scary. But, you know, eventually you come to learn that, you know, they mean no harm at all. And it is just purely absolute fascination.
Yeah. So, like, did you learn Chinese, like, to communicate? How did you overcome this language challenge? How did you deal with it?
I did. Well, I tried. I won't say I learned it, but I did try. And I used to have lessons every week with a Chinese tutor named Vera Wang. And she was great, but it's a really tough language to learn. I don't know if you can ever truly become fluent in it. But slowly, bit by bit, you know, I started to learn more and more words, and I started to, I think by the time we left Xi'an, which was 2.5 years later, I could have a basic conversation with somebody on the street. So, and I could go to the hairdressers and talk to my hairdresser and have, he spoke a bit of English, I spoke a bit of Chinese, and we would get the gist of what we were saying.
Yeah, in your book you are describing this stories with your hairdresser. Yeah. That's very, very funny. So like, what would you say? Because it was like completely different environment and completely different culture. So like, what we can do like to improve our like cross-cultural communication skills? Of course, learning the language is one of those things that we can do. What else, like from your point of view, from your experience?
To make it easier to
and like to adapt.
I think you have to, obviously we know you have to step outside of your comfort zone, which is scary and daunting. And I think each day I made it my mission to go a little bit further and explore our surroundings, because there is that temptation, I think, to just hole up in your room and think, I'm not going outside. It's all too much, especially when my husband was working, long hours trying to prove himself in his new job. But until Ava started school, we would just go a little bit further each day, walk around the neighborhood, just get used to the surroundings. And I think it's really important to have a routine, even if you're not doing anything, it's good to make one. So whether that's getting up and having coffee, reading the local paper, even if it is in another language. Fortunately, they had an English newspaper there, so I could read that even though I didn't really understand the stories of the day. It gave me a bit of insight. And of course, finding your tribe of people is a big one. I think, and not even a tribe. I think I always say you just need that one person to have coffee with, even if it's once a week, and then you don't feel so alone. But again, it's very difficult. And in China, there were so few expats in Xi'an. So, it was hard to come by people that could speak English and were in the same boat as me. And there were no Facebook groups, because often we think, well, we can just go online and there's usually a group in the country, the city. So it made it more difficult. But eventually when Ava started school, I would meet some of the teachers, and a lot of teachers were expats from all different countries. So that really helped a lot. And I think also the key is to remember that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And those first few months can be really terrifying, and you often just want to pack it in and go home or go back to what you know. So I think just to remember that, it does take at least 9 months to a year to start to feel like this could be home for you for the short-term future.
Yeah, I think this is important point to remember, that it takes time. And also, you said like building the tribe, so not feeling isolated, especially like in China, because it's a completely different environment and culture. It's more difficult to have like new contacts and new support groups. So looking for new friends.
Yeah, I remember when I saw someone in those early days, we were in the car, we would have like a driver because we couldn't drive in China. It was just too crazy. And I remember seeing another blonde lady out the window amongst the sea of locals with dark hair. And I saw her with a little girl who was dressed in a princess costume. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to talk to her. I need to see her, but of course in a minute she was swallowed up by the crowds. But it is, I think it takes time, and you've got to reach out and join different groups and do different things. And we all know you just really have to step out of your comfort zone in those first months so that you can meet people, and also you try and meet the locals as well, so you can learn about the country that you're in and the culture. And I think it's good to try and immerse yourself in that as much as expats, so that you're not just solely in an expat bubble.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So like what did you like the most of this Chinese experience of China? What was like the best experience, the best aspect for you?
I think for me, just that it is such a fascinating country and it
Mm-hmm.
is so different, and it just, there was always so much to learn about this culture, and it's so steeped in history. I think you just have to really, I don't know, just observe it, and I think learn something every day. And I liked an adventure, the whole adventure aspect of it, and we used to travel around and we went to a lot of different cities in China, which were all so different. And I guess you just feel like you are really living life when you're in a foreign country like that, don't you? Even if some days were really boring or very similar to what I do now, I still could look out the window and know that it was just another world. And of course the friendships that you make are unlike any other, I guess. As you'll know, with expats, the friendships are so intense, aren't they, because you really rely on each other so much, that I really miss those friendships even today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that like another challenge, like one of the biggest challenges of expats or expat partners, expat women moving abroad, it's like to find your purpose or find your new career path. Like for example, you had a beautiful career in Sydney, and you left everything and you moved to a completely different country. So how did you manage that, and how did you find like your, let's say, new calling or a new profession or new purpose in your life?
Yeah, it did take time, especially when we first moved to Hong Kong, and I'd been a newsreader and a journalist for 20 years, and suddenly I guess it's like new mums as well. You've got a baby and you think, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing now? What is my purpose besides changing nappies and rocking them to sleep? So I think it was I did have a case of lost identity in those early
Mm-hmm.
days. I remember being quite, I don't know, just, I really just, I was a little bit resentful of James, even though we'd chosen together and it was my idea that said, let's do it. I think when you're actually in the situation, of course, resentment creeps in because they're off doing a job that they love and meeting new people, and you're stuck at home. And I also think we tend to pigeonhole ourselves into the role that we've done, and we don't realize what else we're capable of. And it took a good friend of mine in Hong Kong to pull me aside. I must have been whinging. And she said to me, you've been a journalist for 20 years, but that includes so many things, from communication skills to, producing programs, to writing, to speaking and presenting. I wasn't just a newsreader. So it allowed me to, I guess, look outside the box a little bit. And I started blogging in Hong Kong because
Mm-hmm.
I'd always wanted to start a blog. And obviously I knew that there were lots of interesting things to talk about in Hong Kong. So I started that on our 2-year anniversary in Hong Kong. And then I started writing for different websites. And these are things I probably wouldn't have done in Australia because, you were a newsreader and that's that. You wouldn't sort of venture out, even though they sort of seem similar. You wouldn't go into those other areas, and you'd probably be too embarrassed in front of your colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
to write for a local paper or whatever. So it allowed me that freedom to do those things I wouldn't have done before. And then also I needed flexibility because I had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing a bit of MC work, which I'd never done before, and writing a bit, doing the blog and some media training. So just utilizing all of those skills that I'd had, sort of learned over the years. And when we moved to China, I couldn't work. Technically, you need a visa, but I could still take my laptop. I could still write. I could write for those other magazines and things that I'd started. And there I decided that I would start writing a book, because once I
Mm-hmm.
arrived in China, I just knew it was such a crazy, fascinating place that it would make an amazing book. So while I was there, that's when I started that ball rolling and started to do interviews with a lot of the locals and a lot of the expats there as well. And, I think I think we all need a purpose, don't we? We all need something for ourselves. And even if it's not paid work, I think just maybe whether it's doing language classes or volunteering or, just something that's solely for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, really important when you're an expat wife, particularly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, finding something, finding like your new, let's say, new fulfillment, new goal in life. Yeah. So, and you wrote a fantastic book, China Blond, with all the stories and all the challenges that you had in China. So this is a great example how you can use your skills and also use your experience in the future. So, like, what will be your advice? Like one piece of advice to someone who is moving, who is planning, maybe thinking or dreaming even about moving to China?
Moving to China, well, I think definitely try and learn some of the language before you go. I mean, it does depend where you go in China. A lot of those first tier cities like Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou, English is obviously more widely spoken, and it's becoming more widely spoken all the time. But it helps to learn the language, and it also shows the locals that you're interested and you care.
Mm-hmm.
I think they love it when Westerners try and learn Chinese. And just go with an open mind, because it is very different culturally, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all want the same things in life. We want to be connected and loved and, have a roof over our heads. So I think remember that. And the big thing is that it takes time. Like I said earlier, you're not going to probably arrive anywhere, especially China, and immediately feel at home. You're probably going to think, what have I done? But I think give it time and it will be one of the most amazing experiences you could ever have.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So like, so now you are back to Sydney. So like, what are your plans for the future? Are you planning like another international adventure, or you wrote a book, China Blonde? So like, what are your plans now?
Well, never say never. I think once you have a stint as an expat, you get addicted, don't you? So I think we would really love to go overseas again. And I think with James' job, thankfully, there are lots of opportunities in the future. We've been back in Sydney for 4 years now. So I think, we'll see what the future holds, but I hope that we do get to go somewhere again. And I've started a second book. This one is fiction, but it's based in Hong Kong. And it's about all the things I love to do with, female friendships and, that strength that we have together. So, I think watch this space and we'll see what happens.
So where can we find more information about you and how people can connect with you?
Sure. I am on all the social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, mostly Nicole Webb online. You'll find me on Instagram and Facebook, or at Nicole D Webb on Twitter. And my website is NicoleWebbOnline.com, which is also where you can buy China Blonde from if you'd like to read more of the stories.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for sharing that and for sharing your experience. So I will put the links to the website and to Facebook with the show notes, so people can go and check it. So thank you very much again, Nicole, for being here. And to our listeners, thank you for listening, or thank you for watching if you are watching the video. And please tell us, what are your learning points from this interview, or if you have lived in China, what was your experience? What challenges did you overcome? Share your thoughts with us, and I will be back with another interview very soon. So thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.